I'm Megan, and the night my life finally snapped in half started with my mother raising her glass and saying, "Your sister is successful and responsible, unlike you. She doesn't need help from anyone." The room went quiet, like someone had just muted reality. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I stared at my mother, then at my perfect sister sitting across from me, soaking in the praise like it was her birthright. No one at that table knew that for the past 2 years I'd been wiring $3,500 into her account every single month just so she could keep pretending her life was together. Successful. Responsible. Didn't need help from anyone. The words rang in my head, each one like a slap. My cheeks burned, but it wasn't from shame this time. It was from rage. My mother smiled proudly, oblivious, and added, "You see, Megan, some people just know how to stand on their own 2 feet." That was it. Something inside me finally broke. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping loudly against the floor, and forced a smile that felt like glass cutting my gums. "You're right, Mom," I said, keeping my eyes locked on my sister. "It's perfect that she doesn't need help from anyone." I took a breath and dropped the bomb I'd been too scared to even imagine before that moment. "So my $3,500 monthly transfers end today." The color drained from my sister's face. My mother's smile crumpled. My father finally looked up from his plate. For the first time in years, everyone was staring at me. They had no idea that one sentence was about to tear apart the golden child illusion they'd worshipped for so long. If you want to see how that one line shattered my sister's perfect image and forced my whole family to finally choose a side, stay with me till the very end. After that dinner, I drove home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel, and my mother's words still echoing in my skull. Successful and responsible, unlike you. I'm 28, I have a stable career, I pay my own bills, and I've been quietly funneling $3,500 a month to my sister so she could keep her fantasy life floating. Yet somehow, I'm the irresponsible one. Make it make sense. The minute I walked into my apartment, I dropped my keys, pulled up my banking app, and scrolled through the endless list of transfers. Month after month, the same name, the same amount. Dozens of payments, tens of thousands of dollars. How many times had I told myself, it's just temporary, she'll get back on her feet? How many times had I believed the sob stories, the "my industry is brutal," and "I'm so close to a big break"? And why, if she was so successful, did she still need my money to breathe? The truth sat in my chest like a stone. I wasn't just helping her. I was financing the lie that she was better than me. Memories started colliding in my mind. Childhood birthday parties where my achievements were skimmed over, so my sister's trophies could be placed front and center. Parent-teacher conferences where my solid grades were fine, but her slightly better ones were brilliant. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" was practically our family motto. Maybe that was why, when she first called me crying years ago about losing a job and needing help, I'd said yes without thinking. Maybe I'd been trying to prove that I was a good daughter too, even if no one clapped for me. But somewhere along the way, helping had turned into enabling, and love had turned into quiet resentment. I thought back to all the details about her amazing job. Whenever my parents talked about her, it sounded like a brochure. Big firm, fast track to management, important clients. But every time I asked my sister directly about work, she was strangely vague. "You wouldn't understand corporate politics," she'd say with a laugh. Or, "It's complicated, but it pays well," followed quickly by the way, can you send the transfer a little earlier this month?" How does someone with a steady, impressive job still need $3,500 every month from a not-so-successful little sister? Why hadn't anyone else questioned that? I realized that I'd spent years looking away because it was easier to believe the story than to dig for the truth. That dinner ripped the blindfold off. If she was really thriving, my money shouldn't matter. So why did she look like I'd just yanked the floor out from under her? I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, replaying her panicked expression over and over. What was she hiding? What exactly had I been funding? And if I pulled my support out completely, would she finally stand on her own, or would everything crash? I knew one thing. I was done being the quiet ATM in the background while my parents worshipped the golden child. If I wanted answers, I needed someone who'd seen her life up close without the family filter. Someone who didn't have a reason to lie to me. My thoughts landed on a name from our past. Someone who'd gone to college with her and had stayed in touch. Maybe he knew who she really was now, not the polished version my family bragged about. My heart pounded as I pulled out my phone and opened his profile. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before finally typing, "Hey, it's Megan. I need to ask you something about my sister. Do you have time to talk?" I hit send, stared at the screen, and wondered. Was I about to confirm my worst suspicions, or discover something even worse? His reply came faster than I expected. "Hey Megan, wow, it's been a while. Sure, what's up? Want to grab coffee and catch up?" My stomach twisted. This wasn't catching up. This was me digging up the truth my family had conveniently never asked for. Still, I agreed. And a few hours later, I was sitting in a corner booth of a small cafe, my shoulders tight, my fingers wrapped around a coffee I was too anxious to drink. He walked in, waved, and smiled like this was just another normal day. For me, it felt like walking into a courtroom. After a bit of small talk that I barely heard, I finally cut to the chase. "I need to ask you about my sister," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "My family keeps talking about this amazing job she has, how she's on track to become a manager, how she's so successful and responsible." But I hesitated, then decided to stop sugarcoating. "I've been sending her $3,500 every month for 2 years. If she's doing that well, why does she need all that money?" His eyes widened. "You've been sending her what?" he asked, leaning forward. "Megan, she told me you help her out sometimes, but I thought it was, like, the occasional favor, not—" He shook his head slowly. "That's a lot of money." Cold anger crept up my spine. "So what's really going on?" I pressed. "Has she been working at that big firm she tells our parents about? Is she actually in some fancy position, or is that all made up?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Last I knew, she wasn't at any big firm," he said carefully. "She had a job a while ago but got fired and was doing freelance stuff after that. She told people she was consulting and between offers. I never heard anything about a stable position. Definitely nothing that matched what you're describing." The cafe noise faded into a dull hum as his words sank in. Fired. Freelance. Between offers? He hesitated again. Honestly, it always felt like she was trying to keep up an image. Designer outfits, expensive brunches, weekend trips. She said she had it covered. I just assumed she could afford it. My mind flashed through all the times she'd told me she was barely managing, that she needed my help, just until the promotion clears, just until I pay off this one thing. I pictured the vacation photos she'd posted, beaches, rooftop bars, new handbags, while I'd been eating leftovers and clipping coupons because things are tight right now. Had I really been funding her lifestyle while she played pretend for everyone else? "Did she ever say anything about our parents?" I asked, my voice getting sharper. "About me?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I don't want to stir drama," he started. "Please." "I'm already in it," I said. "Just tell me." He exhaled. "She complained sometimes that your parents were always on her back and that you were controlling with money. She said you liked to hold it over her, that you were jealous and trying to make her feel like a failure." For a moment, I genuinely forgot how to breathe. Jealous, controlling, holding money over her. Was that the story she told to justify bleeding me dry? A bitter laugh escaped me. So let me get this straight, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I work my ass off, wire her thousands every month, keep her secret so our parents don't worry, and somehow I'm the villain in her version of the story? He watched me carefully. I'm not saying she was right, he said softly. I'm just telling you what I heard. From the outside, it always looked like she was living this amazing, polished life. If you hadn't told me about the money, I'd never have guessed she needed help at all. Something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about enabling anymore. This was about betrayal. I'd sacrificed my savings, delayed my own plans, and twisted myself into knots to protect her image. And in return, she'd painted me as the jealous, controlling sister. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app again, turning the screen so he could see the long string of payments. This, I said, my voice flat, is what I've been doing for her. While everyone praises her for being so independent. He looked genuinely stunned. Megan, honestly, that's messed up, he said. She shouldn't be taking advantage of you like that. And lying on top of it? That's not okay. On the way home, my thoughts were no longer just questions. They were decisions forming, piece by piece. If she wanted to live a lie, fine. But she was going to do it without my money. And if my parents insisted on worshiping the golden child, they were going to do it with their eyes open for once. I scrolled through her social media, screenshotting her luxury weekends, her hard-earned rewards, the handbags I could never justify buying for myself. Then, I opened my banking statements and exported 2 years of transfers. The numbers looked obscene on paper. This wasn't support. This was a one-woman funding operation for someone else's fantasy. I stared at the evidence and felt something fierce rise in my chest. For the first time, I wasn't just hurt. I was ready to fight back. Why am I the only one paying for her lies? I whispered to myself. Why does she get the applause while I get the bill? I knew what I had to do next. I wasn't going to argue about rumors or feelings. I was going to walk into her perfectly curated world with hard proof and force her to choose the truth or the collapse of everything she'd built. And if the golden child didn't like it, too bad. The free ride was already over. The only question left was how loudly it would crash. I didn't announce my visit. I wanted to see her life as it really was, not the cleaned-up version she rolled out when she had time to prepare. When I arrived at her building, the lobby alone screamed money. Marble floors, soft lighting, a concierge desk that I knew wasn't cheap. Funny how someone struggling could still afford to live like this while I was squeezing every dollar to make rent and send her that $3,500. I rode the elevator up, my phone buzzing with anxiety in my pocket, my bag heavy with printed bank statements and screenshots. This time, I wasn't coming as the supportive sister. I was coming as the one who had paid for everything and finally wanted a receipt. She opened the door with a bright, practiced smile. Megan, I wasn't expecting you, she said, voice sugary. Come in, come in. The apartment looked like a showroom, stylish furniture, expensive decor, not a single sign of real struggle. No secondhand couch, no bare walls, no evidence of someone barely scraping by. My jaw clenched. Nice place, I said, letting the words hang. Must be a great job. She laughed it off. You know how it is. Long hours, but it pays off. I told Mom and Dad about my promotion. They're so proud. My stomach turned. Proud. Of a story she'd stitched together while I floated her reality. I'm sure they are, I replied. Maybe you can explain to me how that promotion works, though, because I talked to someone who seems to remember you very differently. Her smile faltered. What are you talking about? She asked. I didn't make her wait. I pulled the stack of papers from my bag and dropped them on her pristine coffee table. 2 years' worth of bank statements, I said. Every $3,500 transfer, every month. My money, your account. I pulled out my phone and opened the Photos app. And here, I added, flipping through screenshot after screenshot, are your vacations, designer bags, brunches, nights out. Tell me, which part of this looks like someone fighting to survive in a brutal industry? Whoa, her face drained of color. Megan, this is invasive, she snapped. You're going through my life like you own it. I raised an eyebrow. When I've literally paid for most of it? Yeah, I think I get to ask a few questions. Her eyes flashed with anger. I never asked you to make a show of it, she said. You offered to help. Now you're throwing it in my face to make yourself feel superior. I almost laughed. Superior? You told people I was controlling, that I was jealous, that I held money over your head. Meanwhile, you let Mom stand there and call you successful and responsible, while I'm treated like the disappointment. She crossed her arms, pacing. So what do you want, Megan? An apology? A thank you card? Do you want everyone to stand up and clap because you're such a martyr? The way she twisted everything made my skin crawl. I want the truth, I said sharply. Are you working at that big firm or not? Are you actually on track for some promotion, or have you been lying to Mom and Dad while living off my income? The silence stretched until she finally cracked. No, I'm not at that firm. She spat. I never was. I interviewed. I didn't get it. I panicked. And I told them I did. I thought it would buy me time until I landed something real. But things kept falling through and the lie just got bigger. And my money? I asked. What exactly did you use it for? She looked away. Rent. Bills. Some other stuff, she muttered. I narrowed my eyes. Other stuff like vacations? Designer bags? Luxuries you pretended you earned while I was juggling extra shifts and saying no to things I wanted? She exploded. I was drowning, she shouted. Every time I talked to Mom and Dad, all they saw was the golden child who couldn't fail. I had to keep up. Do you know what that pressure feels like? I stared at her in disbelief. Do you know what it feels like to be the backup daughter who bails the golden child out and still gets told she's not good enough? I shot back. You chose to lie. You chose to use me as your silent sponsor. You chose to make me the villain in your story so you could keep being the hero in theirs. She grabbed a mug from the table and slammed it down so hard coffee splashed over the polished wood. So what now? She demanded. You cut me off and what? Watch me crash? Watch everyone turn on me? Is that what you want? Are you happy now that you finally have something to hold over me? I held her gaze. What I want, I said quietly, is for you to stop treating my life like collateral for your image. The transfers stopped the moment Mom announced you didn't need help from anyone. You're right. This isn't my responsibility anymore. You get to live with the story you created. For the first time, real panic settled in her eyes. Not theatrical, not manipulative, just raw fear. Megan, I can't pay next month's rent without that money, she whispered. I have bills, debts, people who expect things from me. You can't just pull out. I tilted my head. Funny. That sounds exactly like needing help from someone. You should tell Mom that next time she brags about how independent you are. She reached for my arm. Please, just one more month. I'll fix it, I swear. I'm close to something. I just need time. How many times had I heard that? How many times had I chosen to believe it? I pulled my arm back. No, I said firmly. I'm done sacrificing my future so you can keep pretending you've already made it. I walked to the door, feeling her stare burning into my back. If you won't help me, she called out, desperation creeping in, then at least don't ruin everything. Don't tell them. They don't need to know. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. That's the problem, I said without turning around. They should have known a long time ago. Maybe if they'd been paying attention instead of worshipping the idea of you, none of this would have gotten this far. I walked out, letting the door click shut behind me, My heart pounded. My palms were sweaty. But underneath the adrenaline was something new, a sharp, steady sense of power. For once, I wasn't the silent, overlooked daughter. For once, I held the truth and the choice of what to do with it. The question was no longer, can I keep supporting her? It was, how far am I willing to go to finally end this golden child myth? I thought cutting off the money would be the hardest part. I was wrong. The real storm started when my mother called me 2 days later, her voice bright and oblivious. "Megan, you should be nicer to your sister," she scolded lightly. "She told me you were being difficult. She's under a lot of pressure at work. They're talking about giving her even more responsibility now that she's handling those big clients. You could learn something from her dedication." I stared at my phone, stunned. Even now, my sister was spinning the story. She was probably sitting in that overpriced apartment, surrounded by things I'd paid for, telling our mother that I was just being difficult while she worked so hard. I felt something inside me snap into place. "Enough. Mom," I said slowly, "how exactly do you think she's paying for that lifestyle you're so proud of?" There was a pause. "Well, from her job, of course," my mother replied as if it were obvious. "She's successful, Megan. She doesn't lean on anyone like you always seem to." The irony almost knocked the air out of my lungs. I pulled my laptop closer, opened the folder I'd created, and stared at the evidence laid out in front of me. Screenshots, bank statements, timestamps, dollar amounts, vacation photos with captions like, "When hard work pays off." How many lies could a family swallow before choking? "Mom," I said, my voice firming, "we need to talk in person. All of us. You, Dad, me, and her. At your place. Tonight." She sounded taken aback. "Why? Did something happen?" "Yes," I answered. "Something has been happening for a long time. You just haven't wanted to see it." There was a long silence before she finally agreed. "Fine. Come for dinner. But Megan, I don't want any drama." I almost laughed. "That depends on whether you prefer the truth or the performance you've been clapping for." That evening, I walked into my parents' house with my laptop under my arm and my heart beating like a drum. My father sat in his usual chair, scrolling through his phone, half interested in the world. My mother fussed in the kitchen, setting the table for 4. "She's running late," Mom said apologetically. "You know how it is with important jobs." "Yeah," I replied. "I know exactly how it is." We sat down, and before the food even hit the table, I opened my laptop. "We're going to wait for her," my mother protested. "We don't need her here for this part," I said, meeting her eyes. "We need you two to hear something first." I pulled up the first bank statement. "For the last 2 years," I began, "I've been sending your successful and responsible daughter $3,500 every month." My father finally looked up. "What?" he asked, frowning. "Why would you do that?" My mother looked offended. "That can't be right. If anyone was sending anyone money, it would be your sister sending it to you. She's the one with the career." "No, Mom," I said, turning the screen so they could see the long list of transfers. "These are my accounts. That's my money, and that's her name. You can match the dates with the 'she's doing so well' speeches if you want. It lines up perfectly." Their faces shifted from disbelief to shock as they skimmed the records. My father cleared his throat. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. She told you what you wanted to hear," I cut in. "Big firm, promotion, big clients. Meanwhile, she's been unemployed or freelancing at best. She's been using my money to pay her rent, bills, and whatever else keeps her image polished enough to earn your praise." My mother shook her head, clinging to denial. "That doesn't sound like her. She's always been so driven." I clicked to the folder of screenshots. "Driven enough to use my money for this?" I asked, flipping through images of vacations, luxury dinners, designer bags. Captioned, treating myself after a long week at the office. What office, Mom? The one that only exists in her Instagram captions? There was a knock at the door. My mother jumped, grateful for the interruption, and went to open it. My sister walked in, dressed impeccably as always, greeting them with air kisses and practiced charm. When she saw me with my laptop open, her smile flickered. "What's going on?" she asked cautiously. "We're having a family talk?" I said. "Don't worry. You're the star of the show. Like always?" My mother motioned for her to sit. "Your sister is making some strange claims," she said nervously. "She thinks we don't know you the way we think we do." My sister's eyes narrowed slightly. "Megan, what are you doing?" I took a deep breath. "I'm done being your silent sponsor while you paint me as the jealous underachiever," I said. "I've shown them the transfers, the $3,500 every month, for 2 years. I've shown them the vacations, the bags, the dinners, all the things you credited to your big promotion. So go ahead. Tell them again how independent you are." Her face hardened. "This is pathetic," she spat. "You're so obsessed with tearing me down that you've turned into a stalker. Going through my posts, my life. Do you realize how unhealthy that is? Do you realize how unhealthy it is to build your life on lies and my bank account?" I shot back. "You lied to them. You lied to me. You built a throne out of my sacrifices and then let them compare me to you like I was garbage." My father leaned forward, voice low and dangerous. "Is it true?" he asked. "Did you lie about your job?" My sister's eyes darted between us. For the first time, she seemed genuinely cornered. "I exaggerated," she muttered. "I had interviews at that firm. I did some contract work. It's not like I did nothing." "You told us you were a manager," my mother whispered, clutching the edge of the table. "You told us they relied on you." My sister's jaw clenched. "I was going to get there," she insisted. "I just needed time. If Megan hadn't cut me off—" "Don't you dare blame this on me," I interrupted. "You had time. You had money. You had support. Instead of using it to actually fix your situation, you used it to keep pretending you were already successful." The room buzzed with tension. My mother's eyes filled with tears, not just of hurt, but of humiliation. "All those times I bragged about you," she whispered. "All those times I used you as an example to your sister." Her voice broke. "And all along, she was the one actually standing on her own." My sister glared at me. "Are you happy now?" she hissed. "You've destroyed me. They'll never look at me the same way again." I held her gaze without flinching. "You destroyed yourself," I said quietly. "You decided that being honest wasn't good enough. You decided that using me was easier than admitting you were struggling. This isn't revenge for nothing. This is the bill finally coming due." My father sat back, his face grim. "The money stops," he said. "From everyone. There will be no more lies in this house. If you want to rebuild, you do it honestly. No secret transfers, no fake promotions." My mother nodded slowly, still shaken. "And you," she added, turning to me, "should never have had to carry this alone." The words landed like something I'd been waiting my whole life to hear. For the first time, I wasn't the disappointing daughter sitting in the shadow of the golden child. I was the one who had kept everything from collapsing completely, and then finally let it fall. My sister shot up from her chair, eyes blazing, and grabbed her bag. "Fine," she snapped. "Cut me off. See if I care." But the slight tremor in her voice betrayed her. She headed for the door, then turned back to me. "You think you've won," she said. "You think this makes you better. But when I'm gone and you're stuck dealing with their expectations, we'll see how long you last." The door slammed behind her. My mother flinched. My father exhaled slowly. I sat there, heart pounding, my hand still pressed to the laptop. Had I gone too far? Was this justice or pure revenge? I didn't know yet. All I knew was that for the first time, the golden child wasn't untouchable anymore, and I was no longer the silent, supporting character in her story. I'd written a new script, and everyone had just heard the first act. In the weeks that followed, the silence was almost louder than the fights used to be. No more group texts from my mother gushing about my sister's latest achievement. No more passive-aggressive comparisons slipped into casual conversations. Instead, there were awkward pauses, hesitant calls, and a lot of unspoken questions hanging in the air. My mother struggled with the embarrassment of realizing she'd been bragging about a lie. My father retreated into work more than usual. And me? I tried to remember what my life looked like before $3,500 disappeared from my account every month. The first time my paycheck came in without an automatic transfer scheduled, I just stared at the numbers. It felt unreal. That money had always barely touched my hands before it flew out again. Now it was mine. I sat down with a notebook and wrote out all the things I'd postponed. Paying off my credit card in full, building a real emergency fund, taking a course I wanted, even something as simple as replacing my falling-apart laptop. For years, I'd convinced myself that sacrificing those things made me a good sister. Now, I had to ask myself a harder question. Since when did good mean expendable? I started making changes. I paid down debt. I moved a chunk of money into savings and watched the balance rise with a mix of relief and guilt. I said yes to a professional development conference I'd always said no to because things are tight. At work, I volunteered for a big project I'd previously been too exhausted to take on. Without the constant financial pressure and emotional weight of my sister's problems, I suddenly had energy. Energy I hadn't realized I'd been bleeding out of my life. Within a couple of months, my boss called me into her office and offered me a promotion. "You've been carrying more than your share for a while," she said. "We just finally see it clearly now." I almost laughed at the parallel. Meanwhile, my sister's carefully curated life started to crack in public, not just behind the scenes. Little things showed up first. Fewer glamorous posts, more generic quotes, longer gaps between updates. Then, the real signs appeared. A mutual acquaintance mentioned she'd moved out of her expensive apartment suddenly. Someone else said they'd heard she was between places and crashing with a friend. I pretended not to care, but every rumor hit a nerve. Part of me felt vindicated. This was what happened when the truth finally came out. Another part of me still heard her voice saying, "You're happy to watch me fail." One night, my phone lit up with her name after weeks of silence. My heart thudded as I stared at the screen. I let it ring out, then listened to the voicemail. Her voice was small, strained. "Megan, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need help. Not money, just, can we talk? Please." I played it twice, anger and concern wrestling inside me. Was this another performance, or was she actually ready to be honest? If I called back, would I be dragged right back into the same cycle? If I didn't, was I crossing the line from boundary to cruelty? After a long internal battle, I agreed to meet her, but on my terms. A public place. No money, no deals. I chose a quiet cafe, arrived early, and sat by the window. When she walked in, she looked smaller somehow. No polished outfit, no expensive accessories, just a simple sweater and tired eyes. She sat down across from me, clutching her cup. "You look good," she said awkwardly. "You look tired," I replied honestly. She gave a humorless laugh. "That's one way to put it." There was a long silence before she finally spoke. "I moved out of the apartment," she admitted. "Couldn't afford it. I'm renting a room now. Sold some stuff. Still owe money." She took a shaky breath. "Mom and Dad won't give me anything unless I come clean and get some boring job that's beneath me. I thought they'd calm down, but they're serious." "You lied to them for years," I said, And used me to keep the lie going. She winced. I know. You made sure I'll never forget it. No, I corrected. Your choices made sure of that. I just stopped hiding the evidence. She stared at her hands. I'm applying everywhere now. Real jobs. Not just the dream ones. But it's hard to go from golden child to no one's impressed. Her eyes lifted to mine. Do you have any idea what that feels like? The question stung because yes, I did. I'd lived my whole life as the less impressive one. The difference was that I'd learned to exist without applause. She was only now realizing the spotlight had a cost. I know exactly what it feels like, I said. The only difference is that when I felt that way, I didn't have a sister secretly paying my bills. She swallowed. I'm not asking you to pay them now, she said quietly. I know you're done. I get it. I messed up. I messed up worse than I even understood until everything fell apart. She hesitated, then added, I just wanted to ask if there's any way you could at least not hate me. The honesty in her voice threw me off more than the anger ever did. For a moment, I saw not the golden child, but a scared, flawed person who'd built her life on a lie because she was afraid the truth wouldn't be enough. Was that worth forgiving? Was that my job? Was it possible to have a relationship with her that didn't involve me rescuing her? I don't hate you, I said slowly. I'm still angry. I probably will be for a while. But hate? No. What I hate is the way you used me. The way you let them compare us when you knew the truth. The way you turned me into the jealous villain in your story so you could keep playing the hero in theirs. She nodded, eyes glistening. I know, she whispered. And I'm sorry. Not the, please fix this for me kind of sorry. Just the real kind. I don't expect you to fix anything. I just didn't want the last version of me in your head to be the one screaming at you in that apartment. I sipped my coffee, thinking. Revenge had felt satisfying when I watched the golden child finally fall from her pedestal. But sitting here, I realized something important. My real victory wasn't in her suffering. It was in my freedom. Freedom from funding her lies. Freedom from swallowing my own needs. Freedom from being the invisible daughter. Here's what I can offer, I said at last. I won't give you money. Not now. Not a little. Not just this once. If you ask, I'll say no. Every time. But if you actually do the work, if you get a real job, if you stick with the truth, if you're honest with mom and dad, I'm willing to talk. As sisters. Not as your personal bank. She nodded, biting her lip. That's more than I deserve, she said. But I'm grateful. As we parted ways, I felt something strange. Not the clean, sharp satisfaction of revenge, but a heavier, quieter sense of closure beginning to form. This wasn't about making her pay anymore. Life had already started doing that. This was about finally choosing myself without apologizing for it. On the walk home, one question kept circling in my mind. If you grew up being told someone else was the golden child, what do you do when their crown finally falls? Step in and fix it for them. Or finally, let them feel the weight of their own choices. The silence after my announcement was almost funny. My mother's fork froze halfway to her mouth. My dad stared at his plate like the mashed potatoes were going to give him answers. And my successful and responsible sister went white. For a second, nobody breathed. Then Julia snapped, "You can't just cut me off like that." In this thin, high voice I'd never heard from her before. Like all that polished confidence had been nothing but a costume she forgot to zip up in the back. I leaned back in my chair and repeated, very calmly, "My $3,500 monthly transfers end today, right now. Consider this your last free meal from me." My mom finally found her voice, but it wasn't directed at me this time. "What is she talking about, Julia?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "What transfers?" For years, I'd been the one under that interrogation light. This time, I just sat there and watched the spotlight swing to the golden child. Julia tried to laugh it off. That fake little chuckle she always used when she was cornered. She's exaggerating, Mom. She likes to make things dramatic. I opened my banking app, turned the screen toward my parents, and slid the phone across the table. Line after line of identical payments. Same date, same amount, same name. My name. Dramatic? I said quietly. That's $3,500 every month, for over 2 years, all while you bragged about how independent you were. My mom's hand flew to her chest. Is this true? She asked Julia, her voice trembling. You told us you were making 6 figures. You told us you didn't need any help from anyone. Julia's shoulders sagged like someone had cut invisible strings. I just needed time to get things going, she muttered. The clients weren't paying on time. Rent is insane. Everyone gets help. Megan could afford it. That last sentence came out like an accusation, as if my ability to budget was an insult to her. Could I? I shot back. Do you have any idea what that money cost me? The promotions I turned down because I was too exhausted from side gigs? The trips I didn't take? The years of my life I spent working late so you could maintain your little illusion? My dad finally spoke up, his voice low and deadly calm. What illusion exactly? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been lying to all of us. And then it all started spilling out. Not from me, from her. Once the mask slipped, it didn't just crack. It shattered. The home office, she bragged about. A rented co-working space she barely went to. The brand deals she posted about. Unpaid collaborations and a lot of pretending. The business investments. A designer wardrobe. Overpriced dinners. Impulse trips and debt. So much debt. I didn't want to look like a failure, she said, eyes glittering with tears. You two always believed in me. You called me talented, special, destined for more. And you, she glared at me, you always had everything under control. You never needed help. So why is it so wrong that I did? I stared at her, stunned by the twisted logic. Needing help isn't wrong, I said slowly. Lying about needing help is. Using me as your silent bank is. Letting Mom compare me to you while my money kept your fantasy alive? That's not help, Julia. That's exploitation. My mother turned to her, and for the first time in my life, I watched her look at Julia the way she had always looked at me. Disappointed. Do you have any idea how many times I scolded your sister? She whispered. How many times I told her to be more like you? I defended you. I bragged about you. And this whole time, you were living off her? Julia broke then. Really broke. Not the pretty, camera-friendly tears she used to practice in the mirror, but the ugly sobs you can't filter or edit. She reached for me, fingers shaking. Meg, please, just give me a few more months. I swear I'll fix everything. I'll get a real job. I'll cut back. I just need a cushion while I figure things out. There it was. The script. The familiar plea. The same loop I'd been stuck in for years. Only this time, something in me stayed still. No rush of guilt. No instinct to save her. Just a clear, quiet certainty. No, I said. I'm done being your cushion. I'm done being your secret safety net. If you want a real life, you're going to have to build it yourself. So that's it? She choked out. You're going to ruin me to make a point? I'm not ruining you, I replied. I'm just stepping out of the way and letting your choices catch up. We didn't finish dinner. My dad stood up and walked out to the backyard without another word. My mom stayed at the table, staring at the payment history on my phone like it was evidence in a crime scene. Julia kept saying my name like it was a spell that used to work and suddenly didn't. I picked up my keys, looked at my mother, and asked the one question I'd been swallowing for years. Am I still the irresponsible one? She didn't answer. That silence was all the answer I needed. Months passed. The fallout wasn't dramatic in the cinematic way. No screaming in the rain, no disowning speeches. It was quieter, heavier. My mother stopped starting sentences with, "Your sister." She called me instead, sometimes just to ask how work was going, sometimes to ask simple things like, "Are you eating enough? Are you sleeping?" Little questions she'd never bothered to ask before. My dad invited me over to fix a leaky faucet and, for once, thanked me instead of reminding me how lucky I was to be so capable. Julia moved out of her glossy apartment when the unpaid bills finally outnumbered the excuses. She downsized to a cramped place in a not-so-Instagrammable neighborhood. She took an actual job. Nothing glamorous, just an entry-level position where no one cared about her follower count. I know because she texted me once. A photo of her in a basic uniform, hair pulled back, captioned, "First real paycheck. It's tiny. It's mine." I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to say, "I'm proud of you." Another part of me remembered the years of overdrafts and panic attacks and late-night budgeting so I could keep both of us afloat while she smiled for the camera. In the end, I just replied, "Good. Keep going." My $3,500 monthly transfers never resumed. Not once. She tried a couple more times, soft attempts at manipulation dressed up as apologies. "If you lend me just 1 month, I can finally clear this card. If you co-sign this, I'll be set." Each time, I reminded her, no more money, no more secrets. If we're going to have a relationship, it has to be honest, and it has to be free. She didn't like that answer, but she stopped asking. As for me, without that financial leash around my neck, my life expanded in ways I hadn't realized it was shrinking. I paid off my own debt. I stopped working ridiculous overtime just to make room for her emergencies. I took a trip I'd postponed for 3 years, not to flex online, but to actually rest. I started therapy, and for the first time, I said out loud, "I'm angry that I was the invisible one. I'm angry that love in my family was tied to performance and image." My therapist asked, "Do you feel guilty about what happened to Julia?" I thought about her small apartment, her basic job, her empty calendar where brand meetings used to be scribbled. And then I thought about how it all began with a choice. Her choice to build a life on lies, and my choice, over and over, to fund it. "I feel sad," I admitted, "but I don't feel guilty. I didn't destroy her life. I just stopped sacrificing mine to hold hers together." Sometimes revenge isn't a dramatic explosion. Sometimes it's quieter. You stop playing your assigned role, and you let the golden child face reality without your hands propping up their crown. Is that cruel, or is that finally fair? I still see Julia at family events. The air between us is different now. Less glitter, more truth. She looks tired, but also more real. She doesn't brag as much. She doesn't post everything. She still avoids talking about those years when my bank account kept her fantasy alive. And my mom? She doesn't compare us anymore. Occasionally, she'll look at me with a softness I don't quite know how to accept and say, "You've always been so strong, Megan." I don't correct her. I just smile and think, I finally used that strength for myself. Do I think Julia can truly change? I don't know. People can learn, sure, but some are addicted to the image more than the reality. So for now, my boundary stands. No more money, no more secrets, no more pretending. She can build her own life, brick by honest brick, or she can chase another illusion. That's her choice. Mine was to step out of her shadow and stop financing my own erasure. If you were in my place, would you have exposed your sibling to the whole family like I did? Would you ever forgive someone who used your love as their ATM? Or would you cut them off for good? And in your family, who wears the golden child crown, and who's been quietly paying the price for it.